Now, let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Alex Morash, and let's queer up politics. Log cabin Republicans' normal gay event in Palm Springs sparks outrage. The Log Cabin Republicans in Palm Springs have once again ignited a backlash, this time for promoting their upcoming right-wing gathering, which they call, quote, a normal gay social, end quote. LGBTQ activists said that Log Cabin's announcement was a, quote, dog whistle, end quote, referring to Vice President JD Vance's campaign statement about so-called normal gays, implying much of the queer community was radical and too progressive. Originally planned for April at the Tropicale, a well-known local hotspot, the event promised, quote, community and common sense, end quote, and cocktails, end quote. However, after intense criticism, Tropicale's owner, DiLembo, who once served as a queer favorite for Barbra Streisand as her personal chef, asked Log Cabin to find another venue. Vance coined the term, quote, normal gay, end quote, and claimed that, quote, normal gay guys, end quote, would vote for them just to be left alone. Log Cabin Palm Springs has now embraced the phrase, defending their event as a stand against what they call, quote, radical left queer politics. One of their recent posts stated, quote, we love our country, and that sets us apart from the radical left, which insists that to be truly LGBT, one must embrace Marxist economic policies, open borders, and lawless streets. No thanks, end quote. But many LGBTQ individuals have fired back, rejecting the implication that those outside of Log Cabin's ideology are somehow abnormal. One critic wrote, quote, I've yet to meet anyone who doesn't want a strong economy, safe neighborhoods, and good schools. What that tells me is you need to get out more, end quote. You know, before we even start this discussion, I do also want to remind people of how the LGBTQ community voted in the last election for president. You know, because I keep hearing about like these gays that voted for Trump. There's like 5 of them. 88% of the LGBTQ community voted for Harris. And I think a couple percentage also went third party. So we're talking about less than 10% of the LGBTQ community here. And so when people talk about I'm like, they're non-existent. The LGBT community is the only group that swung 22 points from last election to this election. Mm-hmm. For Harris. So like we talk about like Log Cabin, they can't get anybody. And the idea of quote unquote normal gays, like what the heck does that even mean?
There's a lot of recent coverage about Log Cabin Republicans. Melania has attended one of the sparsely attended fundraiser where straight people outnumber queer people. And 2 years, and I found this from an article 2 years ago. Log Cabin Republicans designated a 2023 outspoken ambassador who is a self-proclaimed internet troll and who tweeted, being a homosexual and quoting it proudly has zero space inside the Republican Party or within the conservative movement, end quote. In other words, they find people who hate them as their ambassador, viscerally hate them. And also, I just want to parse what their quote is here. Quote, we love our country. Interpretation, we blindly support Trump and Vance. And that set us apart from the radical left. Interpretation, anyone who is not to the left of a certain Adolf is, quote unquote, radical left. One must embrace Marxist economic policies. Oh, so therefore you want to get rid of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, everything that's...
Well, we shouldn't misrepresent the joys of Marxist policies, sir.
Either way. So, look, those are socialist policies. Social Security, they're fundamentally parts of socialism that was incorporated into the economic framework of the United States.
The way you made it sound like Marxists would get rid of Social Security, and I was like, oh, that's a different take. But
and lawless streets, I don't think anyone wants lawless streets or open borders. I mean, we are supportive of reasonable border policies, not deporting everyone you don't like, or armed police with military equipment, with cannons. What do they need cannons for? But you know what I mean. When Log Cabin Republicans show up to declare something, usually it's basically tokenism, just like Richard Granell, the guy that they often Log Cabin Republicans often trot out as like the first homosexual to hold a post in the cabinet. The guy is just basically a glad fly who would do whatever they say. It's like Herman Cain for, African Americans or...
Well, and I don't want this to come out the wrong way, and if it is, I apologize. I mean, it's almost like the LCR. I think they're trying to make themselves look cool with that name, LCR. It takes away the old fuddy-duddy log cabin club that I think it existed back in the early 90s. I mean, I was invited with my former spouse to one of those, and certainly not the same people that you're seeing now who are talking about being normal gays. But I think that, these people who are representing log cabin in this quote unquote being normal gays are really almost like what you would call the Uncle Toms of past African American history who, basically were not representing their community.
In other words, the collaborators, the one who hope that they are going to send to the camps the last.
Yes, that they think that they're looking out for their own asses, so to speak.
And also, I just call them the Quislings because that's more accurate.
But I unfortunately I have some people in my own family who think the same thing. It's that we're all borderline Marxists if we aren't. And I said, no, I enjoy all the things. I want my Social Security. Tell your president to not get rid of it because I'm going to depend on it. I'm not independently wealthy where I can just live off, my investments for the rest of my life without that. And you have to look at the reality. Many of us are reasonable, I think, moderates in terms of the good for our country, having lawful, law-abiding citizens, certainly being supportive of people who work hard to, contribute to our society. And, this propaganda, I think we just need, again, to band together and tell our story and slap them with our reality.
Having equal rights is not a radical idea. Having trans people to actually have the human dignity is not a radical idea.
Not at all.
Those are basic human rights.
I would actually say that equality is a radical idea, but that's a good thing. Being radical doesn't equal evil. Like, they were only in the last couple decades of the tens of 1,000+ years of recorded history has equality been something that was considered normal.
You have to look that we can't go back. I mean, even getting outside of our community, many of my ancestors came over from the Germanic regions to escape, religious persecution. And, there are times in our histories, without getting too detailed, where people were killed or, expelled from society or treated like, lepers or outcasts.
And, for people, whether we're talking about how the log cabin calls people Marxists, which I consider a compliment, and all sorts of other things, the thing to also remember at the end of the day, the difference between radical and fringe. Fringe implies no one is buying what you're selling. And looking at who's showing up and how people are voting, the only fringe stuff I see in the LGBTQ community is the log cabin Republicans, because they're literally 5 guys in a rowboat at this point.
And we're not talking about, we're not terrorists, we're not vigilantes, we're not blowing up cars or people.
Well,
none of us have been to a Tesla dealership, at least. So.
Yeah, we don't have Teslas.
Not at all.
No.
Well, I can all come for me on that later.
Okay. That is a big LGBTQ story for today. There's no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing.